might think silence signals weakness, but to a narcissist, it's their worst nightmare. Nothing sends them into a downward spiral faster than you choosing not to respond. No anger, no pleading, just silence. Deafening, echoing silence. Because for a narcissist, you're never just a person. You're a source, a supplier of emotional energy, control, and the validation they so desperately need to uphold their fragile ego. And when you stop reacting altogether, they lose their footing. Their worst fears begin to rise. The fear of losing control, of being replaced, of confronting the void you once filled with your authentic love. Don't get it twisted. Your silence doesn't just sting. It destabilizes them. In today's video, we're going deep into why ignoring a narcissist is more impactful than any confrontation could ever be. From explosive outbursts to manipulative tactics designed to pull you back in, we're covering it all. If you've ever felt manipulated, gaslit, or are in the process of reclaiming your own life, make sure to watch until the very end. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss another empowering message, the kind you absolutely deserve. Reason 1. Silence cuts off the supply. A direct hit to the core of the narcissist's ego. When you ignore a narcissist, you're doing more than just going quiet. You're removing what they thrive on, your attention. To you, it might seem like just a few days of no contact, but to them, it's a blow to their already fragile ego. They don't care whether your emotions are love or hate. They crave your reaction. Every tear, every outburst, even a simple reply to a message, feeds their distorted sense of dominance. Your silence, however, strips them of all control, throwing them into emotional chaos. Imagine someone used to pressing buttons and getting instant feedback. Now they press, and nothing happens. They're lost. Their ego screams for attention, for center stage, and when they don't get it, they unravel. Many narcissists will resort to any tactic to break that silence, from fake apologies and victim playing to threats of self-harm. Not out of love, but out of sheer panic at being left behind. When your silence holds firm, it pushes them into an identity crisis. That's when they may escalate, because control is slipping. But that's also how you know you've reclaimed your power. Silence isn't weakness. It's the clearest sign that you've learned not to feed their cycle of manipulation. And to a narcissist, that is unforgivable. Reason 2. Silence forces the narcissist to face themselves, and that is their deepest fear. For a narcissist, there's nothing more terrifying than being left alone, not alone with others, but alone with themselves. Because beneath the surface, where a real identity should exist, there's only an empty void. A hollow space masked by borrowed charm, false strength, and lies repeated so often they become self-believed. And you were essential to the illusion. Every emotion you showed, every reaction you offered, gave weight to their existence. You were the mirror that sustained their fantasy. When you cried, shouted, or pleaded, they felt important, significant. But when you go silent, withdraw without drama, without needing answers, their nightmare begins. They are left facing themselves. No audience, no performance, no more script. Just the stark reflection of a self they've avoided their entire lives. Your silence becomes a mirror showing them what they fear most, that they're not truly loved, not truly admired, and that the power they thought they held was never real. And here's the truth they can't digest. They don't know who they are without you. Without someone to blame, to guilt, to chase, there's no one left to keep their false identity alive. That's why they'll beg, manipulate, cry for one more conversation. Not because they miss you, but because they're collapsing without the version of themselves that only existed through you. It's the cruel paradox. They never loved you. They loved what you reflected back to them. Now that you've stepped away, you're no longer a panicked reactor. You're the calm force who chose silence, not out of weakness, but because you're done surviving storms you didn't cause. And that to them is infuriating, because when you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop needing closure, you become untouchable. And to a narcissist, that is the deepest insult. Reason 3. Silence strips the narcissist of their greatest weapon, emotional manipulation. They don't need force to control you. They rely on emotional manipulation. Half-truths, guilt-tripping, love-bombing, followed by devaluation, these are their tools. They make you feel adored one moment and worthless the next, keeping you trapped in a cycle of emotional highs and lows. But when you choose silence, you're not just walking away, you're destroying that entire framework. Your silence becomes a non-verbal declaration. I'm not playing this game anymore. For a healthy individual, silence can be a space to reflect and heal. But for a narcissist, your silence is a refusal to participate in their drama, and that shakes them. Without your reactions, they can't twist your emotions. Blame shifting stops working. Guilt loses its grip. Narcissists don't care about what's true. They only care if you believe their version of it. So when you stop defending yourself, stop arguing, stop giving them anything to work with, you take control of the narrative away from them. This hits covert narcissists even harder. The ones who weaponize vulnerability, who manipulate through your empathy. But when you stop engaging, you reclaim your emotional autonomy, the one thing they fear losing most. Emotional manipulation can't survive silence, because silence doesn't give them anything to control. And without that, they're left powerless. Reason 4. Silence destroys their illusion of entitlement to your life. Narcissists operate under one core belief. They are entitled to permanent access to you. They assume that whenever they reach out, you'll respond. Whenever they show up, you'll react. That entitlement may not always be vocalized, but it underlies every interaction. The illusion only stays intact as long as you participate. When you go silent, you're not just stepping away, you're revoking access. You're forcing them to confront a reality they cannot stand. They are no longer special to you. You used to be the one they discarded and returned to, the mirror they looked into to feel powerful. But now, the door is not just closed, it's locked from your side. What infuriates them most isn't the loss of you. It's the fact that you're doing just fine without them. Your peace, your silence, your detachment, they all chip away at their illusion of superiority. You're not seeking revenge, not even looking back. And when you no longer hate them, need them, or even speak their name, you render them invisible. That's what they can't stand. Silence isn't revenge, it's a declaration that you've moved on. You're not just leaving, you're rescinding a privilege they believed was eternal. Reason 5. Silence prevents them from rewriting the story. Narcissists don't just manipulate feelings, they manipulate memory. One of their most sinister tactics is narrative control. They twist the past, recast themselves as the victim, and manipulate you into questioning your own version of events. As long as you argue, explain, or defend yourself, they're in control. But when you go silent, when you stop explaining and stop trying to clear the air, you cut off their access to the narrative. They can't distort what you no longer participate in. They lose the ability to bend your words, reinterpret your actions, or make you the villain. And that scares them, because their control over the story is crumbling. Without your feedback, there's no new material to twist. They're stuck with a reality they can't change. That kind of powerlessness is unbearable for them. Your silence becomes a quiet but undeniable accusation, one they can't refute. And worst of all, it might make others start to wonder too. That's why silence doesn't just shake their ego, it threatens the entire illusion they built around themselves. Reason 6. Silence shatters the narcissist's illusion of being invincible. One of the most dangerous fantasies a narcissist holds is the belief that they are untouchable, unchangeable. They convince themselves that they are the one no one forgets, the defining heartbreak, the indelible lesson in your life story. In their mind, they don't need you to be happy, they just need you to believe that you can't be happy without them. They assume that no one ever truly moves on, and if someone leaves, they always come crawling back. But nothing crushes that illusion more thoroughly than your silence, and the peaceful life that follows it. Your silence speaks volumes. I've moved on, and I'm not looking back. That's not just rejection, it's erasure. And that is what truly breaks them. They want to be remembered, even if it's through your pain, your rage, or your sadness. They want their name to linger in your story. But when you go silent, when you don't speak of them, don't post cryptic messages, don't even acknowledge them. You don't just leave. You erase them. You remove their role from the story completely, and that's a loss they can't perform their way out of. A narcissist cannot function without an audience. So when you walk away quietly and refuse to look back, you don't just exit. You drop the curtain on their entire performance. You live, grow, and heal. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but simply because you can. And that's what they never wanted to believe, that you could thrive without them and lose absolutely nothing in the process. Reason 7. Silence exposes the truth the narcissist can't admit: they still need you. Narcissists love to act indifferent. They'll flaunt their new relationships, claim you were never that special, and pretend they've moved on effortlessly. But behind all that noise is a truth they can't escape. They still need you. Not because of love, but because your reactions once validated their false self. You were evidence of their power, a trophy they could point to as proof that they mattered. You cried, you forgave, you returned, each time reinforcing their illusion. So when you go silent and completely disappear from their world, their internal system starts to collapse. No more reactions, no more ego boosts, just a painful awareness of their dependency, one they never wanted to acknowledge. By choosing silence, you force them into a corner. They begin questioning their own behavior. Why do I still check their page? Why does their silence get under my skin? It's because your silence highlights what they're really missing. Not love, but control. Not connection, but validation. You've cut them off at the source. And that's when they feel truly exposed. Because what you've taken away isn't just your presence. It's the false identity they built on your emotional responses. You become the irreplaceable absence they can't fill. Because everyone new will eventually see what you already saw. But you, the one who left quietly, without revenge or anger, you're the void that haunts them. Because your silence said more than your words ever could. Reason 8. Silence reduces the narcissist from center stage to a footnote. Narcissists live with one dominating belief: that they will always be the most important chapter in your life story. Even when it's over, even when you say you've moved on, they assume they're still the center of your emotional universe. They imagine you still think of them daily, still ache, still watch from a distance. In their mind, your departure is just a delay, a pause in a story that still revolves around them. But long-term silence? That's what dismantles that illusion completely. When you stop talking about them, stop referencing them, stop reacting, they start to realize a truth they can't stomach. They were never the whole story. They were just a passing chapter, and not even a defining one. The reality that you can rewrite your narrative without them is humiliating. They're not used to being sidelined. But now, they're not just off stage, they're in the audience, watching you reclaim your story with no role left for them to play. Not even as the villain, and your silence says what words can't. I don't need closure. I don't need revenge. I don't even need to be understood. I've moved on. Truly. That kind of silence doesn't just hurt, it disorients. It cuts deeper than rage ever could. Because it tells the narcissist that the one who once loved them has chosen peace over pain, clarity over chaos, and that choice makes you completely untouchable. Reason 9. Silence forces them to confront the fear they bury deep: being replaced. As much as narcissists hate losing control, there's something they fear even more: being replaced. Underneath the bravado, behind the superiority complex, is a raw insecurity that they are not actually special. That someone out there can love you better, treat you with the care they never offered, and even worse, that you might realize it. When you go silent, not in anger, not in longing, but in absolute stillness, you leave behind more than a space. You create dread, a silent gap they can't fill, and into that gap their worst fears creep in. Who are they laughing with now? Who's getting the gentleness I once manipulated? You don't respond, you don't seek their approval. You don't chase closure. And in that vacuum, their mind betrays them. They obsess, they stalk, they scan your life from the sidelines. Not out of love, but because they can't stand the idea that they've been replaced, that someone else might now have what they thought they owned. For you, silence is healing, a final step forward, but for them, it's a slow unraveling. The longer you stay silent, the more real that nightmare becomes. And the thought of someone else taking your place, that's what truly destroys them. Reason 10. Silence breaks the reward-punishment cycle and ends the abuse. In a narcissistic relationship, there's always a cycle: reward, punishment, manipulation, then reconciliation. Over and over again. They thrive on emotional instability, keeping you unsure, unsteady, constantly working to get it right. Every time you respond, whether in anger, hope, or heartbreak, you reinforce their control. But when you choose complete silence, You don't just walk away. You break the mechanism they've depended on. You end the cycle. There's no one left to guilt, no one to manipulate, no one to win back. The game is over. Without your reactions, they lose the ability to test, to trigger, to reset the loop. Psychologically, this creates inner chaos for them. They're not just losing control, they're losing purpose. Because without your emotions, their manipulation strategies fall flat. They're left in a space where nothing they do works anymore. And in rare cases, this may force them to actually look at their behavior. A confrontation narcissists avoid at all costs. That's why silence isn't passive. It's a strategic, deliberate act. A disruption that ends abuse at its root and opens a door toward your real recovery. You don't need to scream for justice. You don't need to win the argument or prove your worth. You just need to not respond. Because silence can be the most powerful voice you'll ever use. One that declares, I am no longer being controlled. I'm no longer living inside someone else's chaos. I'm free. Silence isn't avoidance. It's a conscious, bold choice. A reclaiming of your peace, your self-respect, your life. To a narcissist, your silence is the nightmare they can't escape. It strips them of power, of control, of narrative dominance, and most painfully of the delusion that they were irreplaceable. But for you, silence is a beginning. It is healing. It is the first page of a new chapter, one where you validate your own worth. If you're at the start of this journey, know this: you're not alone. You are not weak. You are not invisible. You're walking forward with courage, with peace, with a silence that narcissists will never understand and will never overcome. And remember, you deserve a life free from control. What are your views on this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I will personally read all of your comments. And if you seriously want to level up in life, don't forget to show some love by hitting the like and subscribe button. Stay strong. Until next time.